Hello and welcome to this glorious first podcast. And thank you for listening. And thank you for being here in this birthing moment, where the light of creation is all around us, but also there's probably a bit of blood and pain as it comes through. And this has been a pretty long labour because I decided I would love to do a podcast about storytelling, about the deeper meaning of stories, kind of ramble around into the landscape of myself. And I got all the gear together. I've got this lovely fluffy microphone. I've actually got no idea if I'm using this microphone, if I'm using the computer microphone. I forgot to check. And I had a meeting with Linda Connors. She's a great podcaster. Her Sex Talk podcast is brilliant. Just did all the right thing and got all super ready, and I lit my fire and I said some prayers and I set all the work up and then I pressed record. Not a word except for this burgeoning feeling that I had absolutely nothing to say. I had absolutely no right to speak. And I think that's very old, certainly in my bones. I think that's bone deep. And I was remembering this morning that I was talking to my mum on this big kitchen table. I was having a chat with my mum and we were just having a really open talk. I can't remember what we were talking about, but it was deep and it was sincere. And then my boyfriend at the time came in, he opened the door and my mum just stood up really quickly and said, "Don't mind us, we're just talking nonsense." And I said, "No, we're not, Mum. We weren't." And it's an old place, this sort of diminishing ourselves in front of the masculine, and also the deep core belief that we've got nothing to say. And I've been a storyteller for 25 years. It's not like I don't, I'm not an introvert. I'm out there performing all the time. But at most times when I'm performing, I about an hour before, especially if I'm doing, if I don't know what I'm doing, which is pretty much how I roll, because I want to offer something that's real nectar for the people in the room. I don't want to, prepare something, or I have prepared stuff before and then I've arrived and I'm like, this audience are getting the feels for something else. Anyway, I go through this whole thing where it's like, I don't know any stories. Maybe I should just cancel because I don't know any stories. I mean, I have told thousands of stories and I have to talk that place down. That's kind of like literally climbing out of my body up the wall and doesn't want to do it. So sometimes I just write down a few stories, or if I can kind of go through 5 stories, this story, this story, this story, and then just calm that place down, then it's fine. And I was watching a storyteller on Saturday. Christine Watkins did this great new show called Furrow, and I could see that it was the beginning of the story. She'd put some different stories together and she thinks so beautifully and deeply, and the care that she puts into her work I really honour. And I could see that she could journey with that story for a long time, and that I haven't really done that over the last sort of 10 years. I've had a sort of scattery approach to storytelling. I'm constantly want to tell new stories, and often I get approached to do different stories. So, I say yes, oh yeah, I can do a story that, oh yeah, Mongolian stories, or I'll definitely do a day of Hindu magic in a school or whatever. But I'm feeling called on this Beltane. It's the end of April, and we're revving up. We're revving up to celebrate Beltane in Glastonbury. That's where I'm recording this. That's where I live. And I feel the energy really racing through me. Like really fucking racing through me. And I have to be really careful this time of year, I've realised, because I can just get a bit too excited. And I remember the first time I went to Glastonbury Festival, I didn't sleep for like the 4 days I was there. I just ate it all, you know. I went to see everything, every piece of theatre, every bit of comedy, all the theatre, all the music. I was grateful to be there with a group from Bristol called Folk Tales, and they were really into their music, and they were really, you know, Jeffro and Joe had made their map and timetable, so we were leaving one gig 20 minutes before the next one started and diving, and I just couldn't have done that myself. It's not my nature at all to you know, I've just about work out where the loos are, and other than that I just bumble about. Anyway, there was a thread there. Oh yeah, energy. So I can use up a whole year's worth of energy this time of year. I have to be kind of grounded with it. So today, was my last morning of coffee. Even that I had ground with acorns and other shit to make it less pokey for me. So I know that it's not going to sink me this time of year. And then so also the next thing I need to do is have an outpouring of my creative thought blasts. And so that's when I started to remember that 6 months ago I bought this nice fluffy microphone, and I the volume's turned all the way down. I wonder if that makes any difference. Oh well. And that I had this real intention to create a podcast, and I met this mute place that didn't feel she had anything to say, and also this place of like, who do you think you are to think that you have got anything to say? And then this weekend I was listening to Blind Boy podcast, and I laughed out loud. Oh yeah, it's what he was saying, that he didn't really like sleeping because it was quite boring. And it made me laugh, and in that way it was really good company. And I thought, well, what if, you know, I recorded a podcast and it was good company for someone? That's all we're really here for, isn't it? For connection. And the more connected that we feel, the more that we can find our way back to the village, the more that we can feel like, oh, it's, you know, contradict that place. It's like, it's not my business or nothing to do with me, and get involved, you know, keep getting involved and getting involved and getting involved. Then I think that's how we can, I was going to say save the world, but you know, that's a bit grand, but nourish the world. So I'm going back to the first story, the first moment that I mean, it was probably Ladybird books, or, you know, other occasions do spring to mind when I was thrilled by story. But I'm going to start from this place, from this story, because it was the first story that I told. Yeah, it was the first story I told, and I had this kind of shiver through my body. I was working with a theatre company called Northern Stage, and I was in tatters. I was like broken glass on the inside, and had this, you know, really wanted to be an actress, and had gone to drama school, had gone to Bretton Hall, and had got this job, and just had absolutely no idea about myself, about the world, about how to be. I was absolutely broken, and I had no idea how broken I was. because I'm not saying I'm fixed now. But yeah, so I was there, and that's another story. But we toured A Clockwork Orange for 2 years. So violent. I loved the adrenaline of it, but it was so violent and so young, masculine, kind of not really my kind of thing. So then Christmas came, and we were doing Grim Tales for Christmas because it was an ensemble company. I was there for a couple of years doing loads of different shows. And so Christmas came, and we did Grim Tales, a production of Grim Tales, Carol Ann Duffy's Grim Tales, which is gorgeous, poetic, beautiful. Yeah, really beautiful. And I remember rehearsing it, really enjoying rehearsing it. We were doing it in the round, so we were looking at how to, move our bodies in the round. The whole thing was much more in alignment with my soul. We were working with 2 musicians and having live music. We had recorded music for A Clockwork Orange and having live music. Yeah, it touched me. And so then we get to the first night, and I'm first on stage. Or maybe we all clambered up on stage. It was quite high, and it was in the round, as I say. And so we, in the round being like, kind of a round circle in the middle with the audience all the way around. I remember going up on stage, and one of the musicians had one of those long chimey bar things. I don't know what they're called. I mean, chimes. Anyway, a long chimey bar thing where he could go like, and so he did that. And I looked around and I said, once there was a delicious little girl. And the audience leaned in. Something about the quality of listening changed. And in that moment for me, I knew that was what I have been put on this earth for. That for me was life, was absolutely where it was at. And so I didn't know even what it was. I didn't know. I said to everyone, I'm just going to do children's theatre from now on. And I remember Mark Calvert saying to me, it's hard enough to get work, now you're only going to work in one genre of theatre. That's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but it felt right. And it was years later, I'm questioning whether to keep going on because I feel like I'm going on, but I'm going to keep going on. It was years later when I had seen a storyteller. I saw this woman at Tanuke, and she's African, and I just thought, if I was African, I think I'd be a storyteller. But I had no idea that I could give myself permission to do that, or that there was any lineage for me in storytelling. And then I was at the National Portrait Gallery doing some workshops. I mean, I can't even remember how I got these jobs doing these art workshops at the National Portrait Gallery, which I basically, thank you, Lizzie. I used to pay my sister Lizzie to help me make the art resources because I'm useless at stuff like that. And I was leaning over, and the woman was there who ran the workshops, and I remember leaning over, tidying up some pencils, and I said to her, I'm a storyteller if you ever need that sort of thing. And this other voice was just like, what? Shh, shut up. And she said, oh yeah, that's exactly what we need. And so I got a few jobs storytelling there. Basically, I did 3 stories. She didn't come and see me for the first 2. I was terrible. And she came and see me for the 3rd one and sacked me. But by then I had the National Portrait Gallery on my CV, and it helped me to get more stories, and I'd got a little bit more of an understanding of what stories were about. And I'm still, very, very learning. And as you can see, my use of the English language can really fall apart. And I was probably terrible at storytelling for 7 or 8 years before I felt a kind of small movement. And then those small movements, every sort of cycle, maybe every 7 years, I've had another small movement. Just saying that because sometimes I know, especially when you're in that performer role or you're in a kind of a role of holding or whatever, people can kind of look at you with these like sparkly eyes, like, you're amazing, which obviously I am, but I'm also totally rubbish as well, like all of us. So this story that I'm going to start with, I've noticed when I ask people what their favourite story is, that lots of women say the story and they're not really sure why, but they really remember it from their childhood. I remember being in the I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to keep going with this. So this story, which I am going to tell quite soon. Should I just tell it first? Or yeah, I mean, sometimes this is just to give you a window into my process. Like, the story has just sort of arrived in my belly. I want to say womb, but I thought it just sounds too much like an idiot, and I'm not sure it quite is, but definitely it sort of arrived, like it's suddenly ready to be told. And I'm just going to get my drum. But it's only behind me. I'm not leaving the room, don't worry, I'm just here. And it's a bit tight, so I don't know how it's going to sound. Often when I imagine myself storytelling, I'm holding my drum. But in truth, I'm terrible at playing and talking at the same time, so I often don't. So I'm just singing through. I just find like making sounds helps the story to kind of like come through in all its colours. I'm not making any sense, or I'm not in this moment like trying to entertain you with my singing. I'm just bringing through the colours of the story, like creating a landscape with my sound. I'm creating a landscape so that when I begin telling the story, it's somehow all arrived. And then before I know it, that kind of like just turns into Once Upon a Time. And then we're in the story. That's how it sometimes worked for me, sometimes not, but that's how I feel like it's happening today. Once upon a time, there was a delicious little girl, and she was loved by everyone who saw her, but most of all by her grandmother, who was always giving her sweet treats and smiling at her and had effortless time for her, effortless time to witness and watch, and she could do things over and over and over and over again for her grandmother, and her grandmother never got bored of watching her. And grandmother was poorly. Grandmother's life force was dimming, and mum was stressed. And mum was stressed because life was busy, but she was also hiding. in that stress. She was hiding in it because her daughter was growing up and she wasn't quite sure how to manage the feelings that were going on inside her, and she wasn't quite sure how to manage what was going on outside of her, and life wasn't giving her the time. She wasn't able to take the time. There's a blackbird that's just come and sat down on a telephone wire just outside my window. I think it's listening to the story. Oh, I feel I should just include the birds, just calling in the birds and their sweet singing voices. Please come and sing your sweet singing voices through this story, through us. Let us remember that we are also allowed to sing the dawn chorus. And that was what the mum hadn't done for a long time. I mean, when was the last time she got up at dawn just for the joy of it? Just for the joy of hearing that first bird sing, just the warble of it, just for the joy of opening up her own mouth and lifting it up with those voices. When was the last time she got the hem of her skirts wet because she went for such a long walk, because her body just wanted to walk and walk and walk and walk and walk? No, she was in an endless round of folding and washing and worrying and folding and washing. And her daughter came in, striding into the room with this bright red cape, this bright red hood that her grandmother had made her. And it was scarlet, and it was soft, and it was lined with fur. And it dazzled and it sang, and you could see her from a distance, and she looked great in it, and she knew that she looked great in it. And people had even started calling her Little Red Riding Hood and Little Red Cap because she wore it all the time and she was so happy with it. And her mum looked at that familiar kind of odd sort of shock ran through her body of noticing that her daughter was blossoming and burgeoning and blooming, and not quite knowing what to do with it, and also in the ripeness of her daughter feeling her own sagging and sapping and zapping. So she's, instantly gives her a job, just rides over these feelings by giving Little Red Cap a job. She thinks, what can I do? Or what do I want to do today? And I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and I just want to lump some of it onto Little Red Cap. So she says to her, look, your grandma's weak and she's poorly, and I'm worried about her, and I've made this cake and wine and these will give her more stamina, and will you go over to the woods, through the woods, and will you give them to grandmother? And of course Little Red Cap does, because what teenager doesn't want to just get out there and be seen? And they were it was one of the things that she loved to do, and it's age old that teenagers take on errands so that they can run around, walk around and be seen, and people can say to them, oh, haven't you grown, and look at your young woman now, and all the words and all the witnessing. So she agreed, and she picked up the basket and off she went into the woods. If you don't go into the woods, your life will never start. If you don't go into the woods, your life will never start. If you don't. It's beautiful in the woods that day. The sky's blue, and it's pouring through the leaves somehow. It's like the blue, the brightness of the blue is meeting her for the first time in ages, because it's been one of those winters, a wintry winter, a winter of winter. And the blue seems to be reaching her. I think it's because the leaves, they're new and they're fresh, they're spring leaves. And so they're They're almost see-through in the delicacy of their greenness and the blossom. I can, just a quick aside, because I can hear the guy downstairs who plays the bagpipes, and I can hear his sort of blowing out his bagpipes. So in a minute we might be accompanied by his bagpipes, or he might just be giving them a clean, but I'm just giving you the heads up. So there she is, she's in the woods. There's the guy cleaning his bagpipes by the tree, and the leaves are so green, and the sun is so shining, but there's this breeze, this fresh breeze. It's so good and it's so nice, and she's just unfolding herself. She's been hunched over her phone, or somehow in that way that we're starting to move our bodies in that real like hunched over hibernating way in the winter. I heard that hedgehogs stick their nose up their bums when they hibernate. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but feels quite nice. I mean, I've got quite a big nose, but there's no way I'm gonna do that, even though I'm quite flexible. But anyway, I can feel that that's comforting. So maybe there's some hedgehogs in the woods, and they are slowly just kind of like getting their noses out of their bums and just giving them a little, little scratch, getting the crust off. That's what's happening all around the woods. And there's this lovely dappled light that's going on everywhere. And little Redcap, she puts her hood back, and she stretches, and she just opens herself to the sun. And it's like she's inviting the sun, like she invites all of the villagers and everyone around to just witness her blossoming, to just witness her blossoming. And remember that the oldest story in the world, from ancient Sumeria, Inanna, in the poem of Inanna, she's leaning back and she's saying, "Behold my wondrous vulva." And I think that she's doing that, little Redcap. She's just like, look at me in all my burgeoning, in all my juicy beauty. And that's when the wolf sees her. And he sees her blossom and her freshness. He catches a whiff of her scent, and it's so fresh and it's so new, and he wants it. He wants to taste it. He wants to devour it. He wants to have it. And so he looks at her and he smiles, showing those sharp teeth. And he knows how gorgeous he is. He knows that his fur is thick and that his eyes twinkle. He knows. And there's been many an advertising campaign to condition and to persuade us all that he is where it is at, that he is the power, that he is the one. And he licks his finger and traces it along one of his brows and says, "Hello, little Redcap." Because of course he knows her name, because he knows all the young women in the village. He says, "Where are you going on this fine day?" And she tells him, because she's been told to be polite and talk to adults and be nice to them and speak when you're spoken to, and answer the man's question. And so she does. She tells him she's going to her grandmother's house, and that she's poorly and still a bit weak, and that she's got these things to feed her. And the wolf has a plan, and it twinkles across his eyes, and she sees it, she catches it, but she's not had the experience or the education to know what it means. And she knows because there's a slight clenching inside her body. But she's been told long ago to ignore those sensations. So when he looks at her and says, "Do you not want to pick some flowers, Little Redcap? Do you not want to pick some flowers for your grandmother? How nice would that be?" And he picks a flower full and blooming, a bluebell. And he just shakes it a tiny bit, and all the bluebells quiver. And Little Redcap notices that her body quivers as well. And he says, "Look all around you." And she looks all around her and she sees all the tiny flowers, the cowslips. Oh, there, a primrose. And ground ivy just flowering. And she thanks the wolf for showing her these flowers, which she hadn't noticed because she had her body stretched up to the sun. And she began to pick the flowers. And she picked more and more tempting flowers, which led her deeper and deeper into the wood. But the wolf ran fast and straight and true and went to the grandmother's house and knocked on the door. "Lift the latch. I'm too poorly to get up." My grandmother doesn't speak like that at all. I mean, she's dead now, so she hasn't said much for a while. But I think I'm going to honour my grandmother and do her voice. "Lift the latch. I'm too poorly to get up." And so the wolf lifts the latch and he comes on in and he just eats the grandmother because he's so fucking starving. He eats the grandmother because he's so fucking starving for the feminine. He's so fucking starving for something. He's starving. I mean, if that's a bit much for a podcast, sorry. I just felt it then. He eats up the grandmother and then he apes her. I mean, I just love that phrase. He apes her. He puts on her clothes. He pretends to be her. He pretends to be her so that he can trick Little Red Riding Hood. And so finally, Little Red Riding Hood comes bouncing up to the door and she knocks on the door. Sound effects too, you see. No expense spared here. She knocks on the door and he says, "Lift the latch. I'm too poorly to get up." And Little Red Riding Hood is like, "Whoa, you sound well rough, Nan. That sounds terrible." And immediately is like bumbling about in her basket to get the wine, thinking she needs a sip of this. And then she looks up and she's like, "Whoa, grandmother." And her grandmother's eyes are like, they're hairy and they're bulging and they're kind of yellow and like really, really round. She's like, "Whoa, grandmother, what big eyes you've got." Maybe it's swelling from the cold or whatever. And grandmother says, "Oh, all the better to see you with, my dear." Yeah. And she just really wants to be seen. She really wants to be seen, Little Redcap. It's like there's been so many times in her life when things haven't been witnessed, when she's had no one to talk to about the things that she's already witnessed and seen. She's had so many times in her life where when she was little, she was in a room and it was just backs of the legs and no one had any attention for her. And so she's comforted by these words, "All the better to see you with." And she smiles and she goes to put her hand on her grandmother's head and just kind of like just stroke her when she notices these massive grey ears. They're like hairy and it's a bit of like ick inside them. And she'd had read at school recently that ears don't stop growing. You know, your ears just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But she couldn't help but say, whoa, what big ears you have. And her grandmother says, oh, all the better to hear you with, my dear. She wants to be heard. She wants her voice to be heard. And so she smiles at grandmother, and grandmother smiles back. What a smile it is. It's like the teeth are huge. They've even got kind of saliva on them. And she set up this thing now, grandmother, where the girl, she thinks she's in for a compliment, you know. So she's like, oh, grandmother, what big teeth you have. And she's just waiting. She's just like open, waiting, receptive for this compliment. And the wolf says, all the better to eat you with. And just eats up little Redcap. And I'll tell you what, it's dark inside the wolf. But after a while, see, I can't do it. I might get like a Shruti box or a metronome or something. Anyway, yeah, the wolf's heartbeat was irregular. And after a while, she stopped panicking, Little Red Riding Hood, in there. She stopped panicking and she felt very connected to her grandmother. She didn't know she was in there at first, but she was calling upon the help of her ancestors to support her in this pretty sticky situation. And then she reached, and she didn't really know what she was doing, but she felt it, she could feel it, and the whole desire to live just was like coursing through her body, pushing through her body. And she reached up and she felt the hold of those tonsils of the wolves, and she pulled on the tonsils, and out she just leapt out. And then behind her, hanging on to her, was her grandmother. There they were. They came out whole. They came out intact. I mean, they were covered in shit, but you know, they took them a while to get that off of them, but they did it. And then the huntsman arrived. I wasn't sure he was going to in this story, but he's here now with his axe. I can see him, so yeah, nice to have him present. Actually, this embodiment of yang energy, this embodiment of practical, grounded, earth-loving energy. And he said, oh, you wily wolf, you at it again. And sent the wolf out to the wild, sent the wolf back out into the wild. The wolf went back into the wild. And then the grandmother and the huntsman and Little Red Riding Hood, they ate the cakes and they drank the wine and they lived happily ever after. Wouldn't it be nice just to have some like lovely magical jingles or something? But that's not what we're going to have right now. Sorry, I locked myself out and I had to log back in again. If you heard some like tickety tick tick tacking. So just want to talk a little bit about this story. where to start. I tell you, I did have this idea that I was going to write everything down and put it on a big whiteboard, and I was going to read it off the whiteboard. But last time I'd used my whiteboard, I'd used permanent marker. And after trying to get it off with some nail polish remover this morning, I just thought, oh, bugger it. So here we are. Yeah, it's an old story. Charles Perrault, 1697. That's the first written story. And they say it comes from the Northern Alps, and that, I believe this is an ancient story. I reckon there's stories in the earth around this all over the world. So I'm just telling you what, trying to sound clever by telling you a bit of sort of grounded historical information about it. And the Brothers Grimm wrote it in 1812, and they were inspired by this guy, Ludwig Tieck, who had written a book called The Trials and Tribulations of Little Red Riding Hood. But I've been thinking about this story a lot, because that's what I do, think about stories and think about everything in relation to stories. And the first thing, I'm just trying to decide whether to go backwards through the story or forwards through the story. And I think we're going to start with the wolf. Because I was travelling in Romania recently, and I asked this woman, there's so much God there, we were going to visit a lot of churches and a lot of Catholic churches because they were very beautiful, and and it's amazing to create a place where we can pray and acknowledge the presence of spirit. I've got absolutely no problem with that at all. And I sometimes think about the woods as a kind of cathedral of trees, that it all started as a cathedral of trees. We would meet up in and under trees and in caves before we built things. And the wolf. Yeah, so I asked her, I was like, before Catholicism, what did you worship in this country? And she looked at me as though she wanted to kill me for a moment, but I realised that was just her face of repose. That was just how she was. She said, the wolf. And of course it's the wolf. Of course it's the wolf, because the wolf, makes itself known with that incredible howl, with the wildness, with the danger. The wolf is real adversary to the human, a real I'm thinking about times when wolves and humans meet their match in wolves. And in this story, I think it's been very much changed. I don't think it was originally ever about stranger danger, as somebody put it when I was doing a TIE tour of Little Red Riding Hood about 20 years ago. It's not about stranger danger. I mean, that's how it's been manipulated. And it is somewhere. It's when I wish I could edit this. And it is somewhere, but it's, let's go around it. So we're looking at the wolf. We're looking at the wolf as the wild god, as the untamed part of the masculine, the untamed part of our psyche, of the masculine in our psyche. I'm talking about a human being as a whole piece. When I talk about, male, female, young, old, it's like we're Russian dolls of gender and sexuality and age, I believe. And here she is, Little Red Riding Hood. And I can't see that hood now without thinking of a clitoris, without thinking of a bright red clitoris, and thinking about the beginning to grow and blossom into our sexuality. And how I was thinking about it the other day when my son, I said, come over here, Noah. Oh, I wasn't going to say his name. Anyway, come over here. And he said, come. And it's like, I cannot say come at the moment without him kind of rolling on the floor with laughter, which is great because obviously laughter is a really good way of, shifting stressful energy. And so she's at this age where she's like one giant clitoris. It's just all about these burgeoning, sensual, sexual experiences. And there are dangers in the world. We need to protect that. And she needs to know how to meet those wild places in herself, as well as on the outside, that desire to be met in those places. And I remember being so worried when my son was little. He wanted to go for, he was a bit too young for it really. He was like maybe nearly 10, and he wanted to walk for an hour in one direction and come back. And he really wanted to, and I really wanted to give him that. So I let him. But in that hour that he went and walked off and then came back, so it's 2 hours, I let my worrying get the better of me. And when he came back, totally fine. He'd had a lovely time, loads of adventures, really lovely. I said, oh, Noah, and if someone had offered you, I said his name again. Anyway. Sorry, just, because I don't want him to hate me. I don't want him to hate me. So, he's going to hate me somewhere, isn't he? Because I'm his mum, so I also need to be okay with that. And there I am, worrying about it to him and saying, oh, you know what to do. If someone was to offer you a lift, say it was raining, and someone was to offer you a lift, would you accept it? And he was like, no, Mum, I wouldn't get into a stranger's car. And I was like, oh, good, he's, got that. And then I got worried again, and I said to him, yeah, but what if they said they've got some really nice puppies, and would you want to come and see my puppies? And he said, Mum, I tell them they can't touch my cock. And I thought, well, yeah, great. But it's ingrained that strangers are full of danger. And what I want to birth in this story is that we can be soft and open and utterly sexual and protected somehow, protected without, stiffening and rejecting and othering. Quite like that word, othering, although it feels a bit, like everyone's saying it, but a bit othery, like you're over there and I'm over here and I need to keep separate to protect myself. Because when I went to see this Aboriginal exhibition of the story of the Seven Sisters, the guy who was, he was trying to have sex with them, and he was like going, I'm trying to have sex with them, and they were running away from him. And as soon as they were at a safe distance, the Seven Sisters, they were all like, look at our fannies, you can't have us. And I was really shocked. I was shocked, not by the subject matter, but by the teaching of it is safe enough. Make yourself safe enough that you can completely open. Don't close. Make yourself safe enough that you can say, look at my wondrous vulva. Look at my gorgeous burgeoning body. I am revealing it completely and I'm totally safe. because I just feel like my shoulders are sort of hunched over, and my body, and I hide my sexuality, and I hide my beauty, and that started long time ago, and I feel very safe doing it, but I don't want to, and I don't want to see children doing it either. I want us to be glorious. So the other thing I was thinking about in this story was about the cakes and wine. I was thinking about the time when, you would make cakes from your orchard, from fruit that you had dried, and you would make wine from the blossom and the honeybees, and how, if you were in bed really ill and someone brought you cakes and wine nowadays, you'd be just like, what do I want all that effing alcohol and sugar for? It's not going to help me get better. But how sustaining and rich and glorious, a bottle of homemade wine, and and a cake made from the bounty of the local earth. How beautiful that would be. I don't think I've got any more to say today, but I tell you what I am doing right now, because I think it's really important for storytellers to know, is that I am navigating a kind of black hole of shame that I used to always after I told a story, I would just kind of like the trapdoor would open and I would be completely in this kind of oily black shame place. I can see it now. It's like on my right hand side, like across my shoulder, I can see it, and I can see there's like these little fingers sort of like a part of me still sort of down there from last time or whatever, but I'm not going into that. Yeah, I love the earth too much. I love this world too much. I love too much to let anything like that get in my way anymore. Because I want to step in and step in and step in and be part of this world, be part of this earth, to add my voice, to add my dreaming to this world. Yeah, so thank you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for half listening. Thanks for having me on in the background. Thanks for all of it. Just really thanks for all of it, and many love to your life and your day. And I will record something again soon.